okay, so for those of us that aren't that familiar with this, because this is, my world's not really the micro skiff world. So what is a micro skiff? I mean, is it a boat? Is it a brand? Is it a lifestyle, a niche? What is it exactly that whenever you guys are saying micro skiffs? Hey there, sorry to take you away from the video, but real quick, did you know that on average a boat owner will spend between $1,000 and $5,000 a year just on servicing their engine? And you could actually pocket and save a lot of that money if you would just do the service yourself. It might seem like a daunting task, but I guarantee you virtually everyone can do it with our guidance and the Boaters program. This is just one skill that you could learn inside the program because we have hundreds of other videos teaching you all kinds of boating skills, as well as a weekly live stream where we have questions and answers with me, as well as a chat feature where you can send videos and pictures, ask all kinds of questions, or look for some advice or some guidance on a project that you're doing on your boat. You can join the program by hitting the first link in the description, clicking join, or visiting bornagainboating.com. Now back to the video.
Yeah, so microskiff as a description, microskiff as a noun, if you will, kind of came up in early 2000s. So I'll kind of describe what it is and then kind of give the history behind it a little bit,
Okay.
and then how it connects to boating in general. So generally speaking, the actual definition of microskiff, and a lot of people kind of use it how they feel they want to. Some brands will pick up and say they have a microskiff. But the historic definition is a lightweight skiff generally used for shallow water navigation. So shallow draft, lightweight skiff that's used in flats, estuaries, backwaters, creeks, that type of stuff. Generally speaking, it's 18 feet and less,
Okay.
25 or really 30 horsepower and less, because as you've seen with four strokes, the 25 and the 30 are basically the same engine. They just, quote, tune one differently. But so it's 18 feet and less, 25 to 30 horsepower and less, narrow beams, usually 70-inch beams or less. And they're meant for shallow water, poling, shallow water fishing, backwaters, estuaries. They're usually a very lightweight construction. And historically, they are fiberglass construction.
Okay.
So, a little bit different than, say, an aluminum boat, a John boat, but we'll kind of get into that because I think there's some crossovers happening. So that is the traditional, that is the definition. And that definition actually came out of microskiff.com. So kind of the history, where did microskiff.com come from? So a good friend of mine, Tom, he was actually a member of a very popular forum at the time, and it still has a very good membership, the GNU forum. Now, a GNU is a type of microskiff.
Okay.
Shallow water, narrow, typically 25, 30 horsepower and less, fiberglass. And the history behind the GNU is actually really interesting. The gentleman who designed it worked at NASA and designed the skiff. So there's a whole like history behind the GNU, which is actually very fascinating. But Tom had kind of said, hey, look, there's this world outside of just the GNUs. There's this other world of small skiffs. Well, micro skiffs, they're not a full big skiff, right? So they're not a flats boat. I admittedly own what would be more traditionally considered a flats boat. I have a 16-foot egret flats boat with a 90 horsepower and a poling platform and a trolling motor and electronics and all the stuff that really is sort of antithetical to a microskiff. But the microskiff forum came about, and so Tom had created it, and I and a bunch of other people kind of became sort of the founding members of it. And through the community, through the boating community, we came up with this definition. So it's not like the definition was there in the encyclopedia or the dictionary. We really kind of created this definition of what a microskiff is. And there's always people, well, yeah, but what if? Realistically, 18 feet and less, 25, 30 horsepower and less, narrow beams, 70 or so inches and less. Fiberglass construction meant for shallow waters, protected waters, flats, estuaries, backwater country stuff. That's really sort of the the starting point for microskiff. And what we've seen, and certainly what I've seen over the years, is that microskiff has kind of evolved to include pretty much anything that somebody wants to slap the label to it and try to brand it as, quote, a microskiff to fit in that genre. But really, that is the true definition.
Out of curiosity, do you know what the beam is on your flats boat?
It's not 70 inches.
It's bigger than, yeah.
It's beamy. It's wide.
Yeah.
She's got some displacement to her.
Cause that one really, I think that, well, it sounds like, okay, one, the engine size, and then two, the beam. Like that's like the real separator, because you think of a Hughes, a Maverick, the Egret, these are these flats boats, but the key thing is that, that 18 Hughes might have a 150 on it. Like,
Oh yeah.
your Egret, you said it was a 16, it's got a 90 on it.
Yep.
So, but like
And
you said, it's wide.
it's wide, and it also has a lot of dead rise, right? So the egret has,
Okay. Okay.
don't quote me, I think between 11 to 13 degrees of dead rise all the way at the stern, which makes it a great riding boat. I mean, in
Yeah.
trout, this
Oh
is the boat
yeah.
you want to be on.
Yeah.
A microskiff traditionally will have almost zero dead rise.
Really?
A good example of what probably most people would consider a flats boat or a flats skiff that is really kind of really fits sort of the genre, the niche of microskiffs, was the old Hells Bay Gladesman. Now, the Gladesman was about 18 feet and less. It was about a 25 horsepower. It was a narrow
Hmm.
beam. It wasn't like the Waterman. The Waterman had a wider beam, but it also had nearly 0 degree dead rise at the stern. So again, it's meant to float shallow, which you compromise other things, right? So you're going to compromise ride in, say, the worst conditions.
Yeah.
But the intent is that you're not out crossing Tampa Bay in it. You're in the backwaters of the estuaries.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I do like a Hell's Bay. I think their flats boat. I like that. I like a Dolphin. A Dolphin makes a good flats boat. But yeah, that engine also, with the four strokes, which I think we will get into some of the weight things here. But because like a four stroke, that 25, those things are like 120 pounds or something. So like that would, I'm sure, plays a big part in, you think about a 90 horsepower four stroke. That's not a light engine. So
No.
you need that 70 plus beam to be able to support that kind of weight on the back of the boat. But I didn't realize that the flat bottom was kind of one of the characteristics of it.
Generally speaking, now if you think about where it comes from, so if you go back in history, a lot of what would now be called modern flat skiffs or a flats microskiff, excuse me, a modern microskiff, came from a lot of the very shallow running boats that were used in um, you know 50, 60 years ago. So again, it's protected waters, very shallow running, shallow draft, floating. And
Hmm.
even think about, so really the popularity of four-stroke engines changed boating in a lot of different positive ways, but one of the
Yeah.
negative ways is the weight. You go
Yeah.
back to a 15-inch shaft Mercury two smoker 25. You could pick that up. One person could easily pick that up and carry it and put it on the back of a lightweight skiff, and it wouldn't have a significant impact on draft or balance or all of those other things. And
Hmm.
certainly as small four stroke engines like the 25 and 30s became popular, it it really kind of caused boat manufacturers to change how they design their boats, because while it's the same power, same shaft horsepower, the
Hmm.
weights went way
Yeah.
overboard.
Yeah. 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 They're starting to dial that in a little bit with some of the newer stuff, but yeah, no, definitely. Then okay, then a good question would be, is the branding then? So like, if we're ruling out all these boats that are 70 plus, all the flats boats, so we're talking, Dolphins, Hells Bays, Mavericks, Hughes, the Egrets, all these flats boats, those are out of the picture. So what would the top five, what would your top five brands of boats that would be considered a microskiff be?
So, strictly within the confines of the definition of microskiff, there are a few boat manufacturers out there that still build boats that fit it or are really, really close. Um,
Okay.
and in really no particular order, other than just being kind of alphabetical, because I kind of figured you were going to ask this question, so I'm going to do this alphabetically. There's no brand allegiance here. Um,
Yeah. No,
you
yeah.
know, starting at A, Ancona. So Ancona used to
Ancona, okay.
have, and they may still have, and honestly, I kind of probably should know this better. A couple of boats that really sort of fit that microskiff. Now they got bigger boats that certainly are bigger than that, but I think that's, to me, one of the brands that still kind of maintains a lot of that uh, DNA of what a microskiff is. So Ancona, Beaver Tail, they have some narrow
Mm,
beam skiffs. East Cape. East Cape, I know of two of their boats one specifically that certainly would fit in that microskiff region, still have some of that DNA, though, in my opinion, I think with a 30, they'd be slightly underpowered, but you could still
yeah.
do that. Ginu, I think Ginu, if you really
Oh,
want to
yeah.
talk about what was the one brand that has truly fits the DNA, the definition, and really has a more history. Again, they
Hmm.
go way back. Ginu is one of those brands that absolutely has the highest amount of the DNA. Hell's Bay, they had the skate for a while, which I don't think they do anymore. They have the, oh, Chris is probably gonna kill me if I pronounce this right. I think it's the Eldora, which is their small, lightest one. I believe that one's got a lot of the original DNA that would say it's a microskiff. Salt marsh skiff, certainly that's one. So I think those are going to be like examples of brands that have what would traditionally be considered a microskiff, or very, very close. Outside of that, there are other smaller niche players that I've seen pop up here and there. There's some that pop up with, roto molded something that they're calling a microskiff, and I'm like, no, that's really not a microskiff if you think of of the wording. But I mean, strictly as a brand label, those would be some of the brands that probably have the closest thing to what we would consider a microskiff.
Now, if you like this video, you can watch the full episode over here, or you can watch another clip over here.